Well, well, well. It looks like somebody might be a little prescient after all. Now, if you're not sure what that word means, read a book. The last video that I did, my inaugural video, I explained to you how easy it was for the politically savvy, I guess, Donald Trump to be able to overtake Hillary Clinton in the polls and win the presidency of the United States. I did that a little over 2 weeks ago now, and at the time that I did it, he was down about 12% nationally. He's now winning. It happened even quicker than I thought it would. I can't say he's winning. He's in a statistical tie, essentially, with Hillary Clinton. However, when it comes to one of the most important aspects of polling data, he's actually winning. And that's trustworthiness and honesty. Yes, that's right, folks. Hillary Clinton is losing to Donald Trump in trustworthiness and honesty. And honestly, I can't say that I'm surprised. Because when you are disingenuous or misleading or straight out lying every other time that you open your mouth in the year 2016, eventually that catches up to you, Hillary. This isn't 1996 anymore. Things have changed. That's why you don't hold a candle to Donald Trump when it comes to marketing yourself, because you behave like it's 1996. Anyways, my main point is that Donald Trump hasn't even done his pivot to the left yet, which he will. Don't worry. He's thinking that the race between he and Clinton isn't even really on yet. You'll see his pivot after the conventions. That's when you'll see him start to appeal to people on the left. I can guarantee you that. Okay? Even without his pivot, he's already polling at a statistical tie. A reality TV star is polling at a statistical tie with a Secretary of State. Okay? Let's just get that out of the way. A lot has happened since my last video. Probably the most important thing that's happened is the Nevada caucus. The Nevada caucus was a mess, and I will go into the details in another video if you wish me to do so. It's actually fairly simple. It's not as complicated as people think. But essentially what happened was the state Democrats, or the people running the state convention in Nevada, essentially said to hell with protocol and rigged the ruling, the outcome, to the advantage for Hillary Clinton on several different ways. They dismissed almost 60, I think it was 57 or 58 Bernie Sanders delegates who were not allowed to participate, which, by the way, was the difference in the outcome. It was a difference of a little over 30 delegates, so that made the difference. Second of all, they held votes at times when they said earlier than they told people they were going to hold votes. They were giving people the wrong information, telling them to go to places they didn't need to go to, so they wouldn't be at the time where they should be, when they should be. Now that source comes from Hillary Clinton delegates, not Bernie Sanders delegates. Okay, and on top of that, they held voice votes, which were clearly, at best, a tie. And there's audio and video of this. You can go look it up if you want to. Now everybody says that the Bernie Sanders side won. Personally, I take that with a grain of salt because the video came from a video camera on the Bernie Sanders side, so obviously it's going to sound louder. But one thing is for damn sure, there was no way to tell who actually won that. It's basically a screaming contest. And when you have about the same amount of people on each side, you can't say, oh, the yeas have it, the nays have it. However, without following protocol and then actually taking a standing vote, which is what you're supposed to do, the chair decided, no, Hillary's side wins, gavel bang, we're moving on. They also did not allow the Sanders side to challenge the dismissal of the 50-something odd delegates, which is protocol. It's called they were trying to submit what's called a minority report, which is where the stupid movie gets its name from. They were complaining because those people were not given a chance to defend themselves. They were simply ruled out for paperwork purposes. They said they weren't registered as Democrats due to by the deadline, and they weren't given a hearing. They weren't allowed to speak on their own behalf. Now, originally there was over 60 that were dismissed. Some of them were given a hearing, and it turns out that when they were able to explain themselves, they were allowed into the process. However, almost 60, just under 60, weren't allowed to explain themselves at all. Now, in all fairness, there were 10 Clinton delegates that were also dismissed. I don't believe they were given hearings either. So the Sanders side comes in, delivers a minority report claiming we need to allow these people to be able to defend themselves. This is the difference in the delegate count, and you're just going to ignore it? So they didn't allow them to do that. They didn't even allow the minority report to be filed. The only way we know about this is because a speaker at the convention gave up their time to speak so that the woman was able to list what was in the minority report. So they're dancing around protocol all over the place. Then, after that, Barbara Boxer gets up there and I don't even know why Barbara Boxer was there to begin with. She's the senator from California. This was in Nevada. She's there, I guess, speaking on behalf of Clinton. She's lighting a fire under people who are already clearly agitated because they've been screwed over, because the rules have been subverted, and they're angry, and she's taunting them, literally taunting them. She's telling them, you're booing yourself out of the election. She's blowing kisses at them. She's going, we have the votes, we're the victors. She did everything but say nan and a boo-boo. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so people were livid, right? Livid about this because they were literally watching the subversion of their democratic rights right in front of their eyes, openly in front of hundreds of people, by the way. Reports are that the chair, who also held a second vote in which it was quite clear that the Sanders side won, because at this time all the Sanders people were still there and like half of the Hillary Clinton people had left. So she held that vote by a voice. Clearly the Sanders side won. Now what these are, they're votes on rules, right? They had temporary rules. They were going to make those rules permanent for the convention. They're holding votes, voice votes, which is essentially a screaming contest. The Sanders side wins, and she says, no, I don't care. My ruling is we're going the other direction. She says, you can't challenge it because I'm the chair, pounds the gavel, drops it, and literally runs off stage and leaves and declares the convention over. And then there's hundreds of people standing there going, what the hell just happened? It was the most blatant example I've ever seen of people caring nothing about a democratic process and just pushing through their agenda. It was unreal. What was even more unreal, however, was the media's response to how they covered this event. They didn't, let me clarify, the corporate television media, okay, covered it in such a way that they painted the Sanders people who were upset as being violent and vicious, antagonistic. They were saying that people feared for their lives. Barbara Boxer said she feared for her life. And then the video came out that when she's leaving, she's blowing kisses to the crowd. Yeah. sure she feared for her life. So they're saying that there were people were throwing chairs, starting fights, throwing punches. They were death threats, and well, turns out none of that happened. None of that happened, right? But for 2 days, all they did was spout off and say, well, Bernie Sanders needs to apologize. He needs to get control of his people. Completely ignoring the fact that the entire convention was a fiasco, was a sham, was a show. They totally gloss over that fact for 2 to 3 days. I'll explain to you why they did that. Okay, it's very simple. Because they're looking forward to how they're going to cover the convention in Philadelphia, the national convention, which is going to be a mess. There's going to be tens of thousands of progressives there outside the building, screaming, chanting, sitting and doing, holding a rally essentially. And they're paving the way to be able to cover, they're laying the groundwork to say that these people already have a penchant for violent behavior. All right, they'll go, well, look at the Nevada caucus, or look at the Nevada State Convention. We all saw that they were starting fights and throwing chairs, even though none of that happened. By the time Philly comes around, nobody's really going to remember what happened there. Nobody's going to be clear. They'll just give some glib reference to it, and everybody will. They're anticipating a clash with police. And I agree. I think there is going to be some sort of clash with police, either because of provocateur agents or just because there's a bunch of people there and they're angry, or it's a political rally and there's going to be tens of thousands of people there and sometimes somebody does something stupid. I think there probably will be a clash. And at that point, it'll finally be the final nail in the coffin where the corporate media will be able to dismiss this movement, I would call it, populist movement, as being fringe and violent and angry and crazy. That'll be their final push to sweep it under the rug. They'll say, look, everybody, we told you these guys were wacky. We told you they were Bernie bros. Everything that we mischaracterized them the entire time, that they're sexist, misogynist, that they're violent, that they're ignorant, here's proof. They're laying the groundwork for that. That's why they covered it that way. Now it's come out that none of that stuff happened, and people have had to back off, including Mrs. Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Lovely woman. Head of the DNC, who has been in the tank for Clinton from the very beginning. Now, it came out today that because of how terribly she has mismanaged this election cycle by being so in favor, openly basically in favor of the Clinton campaign, or at least being unable to hide the fact, being bad at hiding the fact that she's for the Clintons, which is not surprising. I mean, Clinton is the queen of the Democrats, right? I mean, this is her turn, right? So I can understand why someone who is the head of the DNC would be pro-Clinton. She probably thinks that she'd make the best president. I can't blame her for that, okay? I will reserve judgment there. I disagree, but I will reserve judgment. However, it's your job to be neutral as the DNC chair. It's your job to fundraise for the Democratic Party. It's your job to make sure that everything goes smoothly. It's your job to be able to unify the party at the end of the process. And she has done none of that. She has done nothing but mischaracterize the Sanders campaign from the very beginning, even going as far to accuse them of criminal activity. Unbelievable. So now the word around the campfire in Washington is that major power players who support Clinton, not Sanders, are looking for her to step down as head of the DNC. Wow. Okay, I thought it was unprecedented when her co-chair resigned. A young woman who is the congresswoman from Hawaii, her name escapes me at the moment, resigned her position as co-chair of the DNC. Essentially, she's on the fast track to being one of the most powerful people in the nation. Resigned her position so that she could come out and support Bernie Sanders, because she was so disgusted with the way that the DNC had been, quote unquote, throwing shade on the Sanders campaign from the very beginning. Now, she says it's because she wanted to make clear to everyone she believes, because she's a veteran, she's served 2 terms in Iraq, she wanted to make clear to everyone that Hillary Clinton is a war hawk. She said she believes in interventionist policies that I think have, in the long run, hurt us, and I want to make sure that everybody believes that. I couldn't come out and say those kinds of things if I was the co-chair of the DNC, so I resigned my position. And then she went on to stump for Bernie Sanders. I thought that was unprecedented, which it was. It's crazy. Nothing like that's ever happened before. Now we're talking about the DNC chair herself getting replaced mid-election cycle. Madness, okay, madness. Before the convention, by the way. She runs the convention. The DNC chair runs the national convention, and they're talking about getting rid of her weeks, about a month away from the convention. This is crazy. However, what it does show is the fact that the Democratic establishment has finally wrapped their head around the fact that people are not going to simply fall in line behind Hillary Clinton simply because the threat of Donald Trump. That's what they've assumed. They said, well, he's, this monstrous guy on the other side, of course they're going to vote for Clinton. It's not shaping up that way. People are very angry at the Democratic Party. Okay? And we're talking about roughly 45% of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders has 46% of the delegates. That's almost half the Democratic Party has voted for him, right? I mean, the math isn't exactly right because we have caucuses and we have primaries, but roughly about 45% of the Democratic Party is at this point quite angry at the Democratic Party. Okay? That's not good going into a general election. That's very, very bad. And it seemed like for months, progressives like me, were screaming about that fact. How do you expect to win an election against someone who's as media savvy as Donald Trump when you can't even unify your own party, when you're turning your back on 45% of your own party, when you have Clinton surrogates coming out and saying that the movement that Bernie Sanders has started is outside of the Democratic Party? 45% of the Democratic Party is outside of the party? Do you even hear yourself? So finally, they're coming around to the fact that we need to do something to unify this party. One is probably going to be the head of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and I don't mean literally. She's still going to be a politician. She's probably going to win her race in Florida, even though Bernie Sanders has come out, essentially declared war on her by saying if he gets elected president, she will no longer be the DNC chair, and he's endorsed her opponent in Florida, another progressive Democrat, which is also unheard of. A lot of that has to do with the Nevada. He was very angry with the Democratic Party after Nevada. Nevada? For some reason I'm more comfortable calling it both. Anyways, so there's that. Debbie Wasserman Schultz probably on the way out. The other thing is they've now given concessions to the Sanders campaign in that they've given more seats at the table for the people who decide, the rules committee of the DNC, than any other losing candidate in history, right? They've given him 5. They've given Hillary Clinton 6. These are people that they appoint to the rules committee of the Democratic National Convention, right? Basically, they're setting the platform for the Democratic Party. So he got 5 and she's got 6. Now, the DNC chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, for now, also gets to appoint 4 people, which essentially is another 4 for Clinton because she's been in the tank for Clinton all along. If she continues to be the DNC chair, so essentially what you'll have is 10 for Clinton and 5 for Sanders, which you'd think, well, that's not quite fair, but I mean, Clinton's winning. Let's be real, she's winning. So that's pretty staggering to begin with, except it's not as staggering as the fact of the people that he appointed. A few of them I never heard of. But one of them is Cornel West. Dr. Cornel West. Cornel West is basically Huey Freeman from the Boondocks with a doctorate degree. Okay, he is as radical. I mean, when it comes to how he feels about the Western white power structure, he's about as radical as you get. I mean, so there's Cornel West, which is amazing. There's I think James Zogby, his name is, not to be confused with John Zogby, who is a outspoken advocate for Islamic peoples in America. There's a Native American activist who basically goes around the country speaking on behalf of the welfare of Native Americans. Which, by the way, just shows you what kind of guy Sanders is. There's no political expediency for him to give Native Americans a seat at the table. Just like their vote means nothing, right? It doesn't mean anything. But he still sees them as being treated unjustly, so he thinks it's important to give them a say. That's the kind of guy, that's what a leader is. That's the kind of guy that he is, right? And then there's also a green energy advocate guy on there. So this is about as radical of a 5 people, they're calling them the chain gang. This is about as hardline and radical as people as you can find to put on the Democratic Rule Committee. I mean, they're going to fight tooth and nail to shift the party platform to be closer to what Sanders has espoused on the campaign trail. Now, it's not really that big a deal, I guess, because nobody's bound by the party platform after they get the nomination. It really doesn't mean a whole lot, but it does symbolically, right? It does mean something symbolically. It means that the ideals of the Democratic Party are this. It's basically like a mission statement for a company, right? They're going to change the mission statement of the company. Now, whether or not people follow that, is up for speculation. I would argue that they're not going to follow it at all once they get elected. But it's significant, to say the least. So that brings me finally to the Democratic so-called presumptive nominee, Hillary Clinton. And I also have something to say about her husband, which is a little speculative too. But a bombshell got dropped on the Clinton campaign today. The independent so-called watchdog I didn't even know this guy existed. I didn't even know there was a watchdog for the State Department, and I didn't know that they were conducting an internal investigation. I had heard rumblings of it, months and months ago, but I didn't really think that they were going to follow through on it. Well, they did. It's 80. They concluded their internal security review, we'll call it, using the language of the Clinton campaign. And the findings are not good for Hillary Clinton. They're anything but. It's 80 pages long, and I will give you, and this is how the Clinton campaign will spin it, I'm going to tell you right now. They're going to say, well, one of the findings is that this was a systematic failure of, electronic security, which is true. It did say that. It said not just Hillary Clinton, but secretaries of state preceding her also were very lax in their, I would use the term electronic security. Now, let's also add the caveat that preceding her, the secretaries of state probably weren't using email nearly as much as she was, right? The world was a little, not quite where we are now, technology-wise, in 2003, right? So, we'll just throw that in there. But that's going to be their defense, because it did come out and say, not only was it her, but it was people preceding her as well, and that there was been up until now, which when John Kerry is in there now, up until now, they've been very lax about their electronic security, and they haven't done a good enough job. However, it specifically cited her for being particularly egregious, given the fact that she routed, I believe, 100% of her emails through, and we're talking tens of thousands of emails. We're not talking like, emails like you and I. We're talking about tens of thousands of emails through her personal server that she had installed in her house. Completely unsecured. Just any server randomly, they hired some guy to come set it up. Did not ask permission to do that from anybody. Didn't tell anybody they were doing that. Even though they were told beforehand something like that would be very risky, because she wanted to use an unsecured BlackBerry, which she apparently is tied to, it's tied to her hip, which I didn't even know people even use. I didn't even know they even made BlackBerries anymore. But okay, she was told no several times, Madam Secretary, you can't use this BlackBerry. It's not secure. We can't be sure somebody can hack this. She said, okay, fine. Not only did she continue to use an unsecured BlackBerry, she also had an email server put in her house that was unsecured. As Secretary of State, and I already went over in the last video about how the State Department said that there were emails in there that if they were released to the public, or if they got into the hands of laymen's, would cause irreparably grave damage to national security. Well, it turns out this report just released by the State Department, not the FBI, let's be clear, there's a completely different Federal Bureau of Investigation, investigation conducted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, because that's what they do. They do investigations, criminal investigations. I'm not saying she's being accused of anything criminal yet. I'm thinking she may eventually be accused of criminal negligence, but that's a whole other issue that we'll get into later on when it happens. This is completely separate from the FBI investigation. The findings of these say not only was she particularly egregious, that people raised concerns in 2010 that within the State Department, staffers, that this was dangerous, and they were told to shut the fuck up. Essentially, they were told never to speak of her email server again. They were told that higher ups had cleared this, that it was fine, and then that they need to shut up and never talk about it again. Well, the investigation said no, they didn't clear it with anybody, and it wasn't fine. Not only that, they said they completely contradicted everything that she's been saying to defend it all along. She's been saying, well, nothing was classified, and it was only, only personal stuff, and anyways, we're completely cooperating with the investigations. No, you weren't. The finding came out and said that you did not cooperate the way that they would have liked you to. That you drugged your feet on giving them the information that they need. Not only that, you deleted 30,000 emails before anybody could see them, saying, well, it was only personal stuff. My staff looked at it. It was just personal stuff. You can't do that. You can't do that, Hillary. And I'm not saying there's anything in there that is particularly damning, but you have to know, as Secretary of State, you can't do that. And if you don't know that, then it is very, very fair to call into question your judgment. The fact that you would go through with it in the first place, knowing full well you were going to run for president a couple years down the road, shows remarkably poor judgment on your part. Not only that, now we have confirmed from an independent source that not only did she do it, she was lying to your face about it all along. And they will continue to lie about it because that's what she does best. It's not 1996 anymore, Hillary. You're not going to get away. You're not going to get away with lying to people. So, what's the final verdict here, right? So far, it's been even Young Turks, which is a pretty liberal, is an extremely liberal online news source, has been treating the news fairly tepidly. My sense is that they haven't quite gotten a chance to dig into it all the way because the thing's 80 pages long. But I have a sense that the political ramifications of this are going to be pretty grave for them. Because there's very little chance that when the FBI investigation is concluded that she's going to be indicted for anything. I highly doubt that. But the American voter and the American people, by the way, they're still voting. There's still a primary going on, and even though Bernie Sanders has to win like 64% of the remaining delegates, people are still voting. And that's not unheard of because he's won much more than 64% in some cases. The American voter is going to have the sense that if she wasn't Hillary Clinton, she would get indicted. She would go to jail. And that is not going to reflect well at the voting booth. I mean, that's not going to have a good effect at the voting booth. Now, do I think it's going to be enough to shift the entire pledged delegate count? No, I don't. But I think it's going to help Sanders, especially in states like California, like big states. I think she might get smoked now. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to be a lot closer in pledged delegates than we thought he was going to be yesterday. Given that fact, and given the fact that there's still an FBI investigation looming, there's still a interview that Hillary Clinton has to do with the FBI at an undisclosed date, I think probably a couple weeks from now, before the conventions. I'm thinking a lot of higher-ups in the Democratic Party are starting to think, can we really run her? Can we really take the chance? I mean, her approval ratings are already historically bad. The only person who has lower approval ratings is Donald Trump, but they're tied. And I told you in the last video how he can handle all that easily. She's not going to be able to fix her image. She's not going to be able to fix her image, especially when she keeps lying. She keeps breaking promises. Her trustworthiness and honesty numbers are just going to keep going down. This is very bad for them. Now, I know that the media they're hot on it right now, but we all know how the corporate media goes. Something else is going to come along and they'll chase after it. They'll squirrel and they'll chase after it. But this is going to stick with voters. And just wait till the FBI interview. That will be disastrous for her. Disastrous for her. I'm not saying that she's not going to be the nominee, but I'm saying she's not going to be president. Because if she is the nominee, Donald Trump wins. I don't see how, after all this, they could hope to possibly repair this. And let me just throw in one other tidbit that came out not too long, I don't know, a few days ago, last week. Bill Clinton is really good friends, apparently. Well, I don't know how good of friends he is, but has had very close dealings and ties and a lot of hangout time, like they're bros, with a convicted child molester. Yeah. Oh, good. Just what we need. Just what we need. More fuel for Donald Trump. Okay, so there's a guy who was convicted in 2005, I think, or 2007, of not of child molestation, but of soliciting prostitution from an underage girl. Okay, he only served, because he's a billionaire and because he has ties to politically affluent people, he only served, I think, 13 months. He was sentenced to 18 months, served 13 months. in jail for having sex with an underage girl. Not just that, for running a prostitution ring, essentially, for Lolitas, which for those of you who aren't sexually depraved means underage prostitutes. It's a Mexican or Spanish term. I think originally it's a Spanish term. It's most commonly associated with Mexico now. That's why Ann Coulter says everybody in Mexico is all for child rape and it's a peasant culture. And by the way, did you know Ann Coulter doesn't think that women should be allowed to vote? Just throwing that out there. You probably didn't know that. So he's running essentially a recruitment process for Lolitas in which he would bring girls in like 14 years old, have them, give him massages in their underwear, and then pay them like a couple $100, $300-$400, then go out and tell all their friends, hey, here's an easy way to make $300 or $400. He was convicted of that. Okay? So, what's this have to do with Bill Clinton? Well, Bill Clinton is such good friends with this guy that apparently he's been on his private jet 27 times. Doesn't really sound so damaging until you find out that the nickname of the jet is the Lolita Express. Okay, now I don't know if Bill Clinton was aware of the fact that it was nicknamed the Lolita Express. I don't know if Bill Clinton knew anything about this guy's sexual deviancy. I have no idea. But a man who was impeached for essentially sexually assaulting someone, because personally I think it's sexual assault when someone as powerful as the President of the United States approaches a 22-year-old girl who's an intern and convinces her to do sexual favors for him. I think that's sexual assault. I'm sorry. It's probably not technically sexual assault. I think it is. Impeached for lying under oath, essentially, about screwing around on his wife with like 6 other people. People who, there were allegations of sexual assault all over the place in the 90s. It doesn't look good that he was on the Lolita Express 27 times. Okay? I can't condemn the man for it. I can't do anything. It looks really bad. And if you think that Donald Trump doesn't already know that, you're dead wrong. He's just waiting to drop that. And right now, what he's doing, he's very savvy. He's not nearly as stupid as people think he is. He's horribly stupid when it comes to policies because he's never bothered to educate himself about them. But he's very savvy when it comes to controlling the media and controlling the debate, controlling the discussion. So right now, he's bringing up crazy stuff. Like, he's saying that Bill Clinton might have murdered somebody back in the 90s, right? For young people, you don't remember any of this, but there were investigations into the fact, there were 3 investigations, in fact, about a man who committed suicide, who was closely associated with Bill Clinton. And back then, the political environment was basically a gotcha game. And I know it seems like it is now. It was worse in the late 90s, believe me. A guy got impeached over it. Okay? Anyways. So he's bringing up conspiracy theory type stuff. And you watch people like the pundits like Morning Joe and Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, and all the dummies they have on there. And they can't understand it. They're like, what a terrible political move. To go on Twitter and bring up crazy nonsense. Everybody knows this isn't true. Only the fringe people think that Yeah, of course. Donald Trump doesn't think he's going to go, oh, I gotcha, Bill Clinton. I gotcha on this weird, crazy conspiracy theory from 1996, right? No. He's just building a wall, right? He's just throwing thing after thing after thing after thing. So 6 weeks from now, nobody's going to remember that Donald Trump was talking this crazy nonsense, right? But when it's number 34 in the the 100,000th crazy allegation that he threw at him, eventually that stuff starts to sink in on people. And then as soon as you feel that, you drop a bomb. You drop a bomb like this Lolita Express thing. Okay? Now all of a sudden, people who are not politically minded or keep up on the news, which is everybody, they start to go, oh, Jesus, I didn't know that. And once you get them to go, you got your meat hooks in. Because now, all those other crazy conspiracies, all those other things that you put out there, they seem just a little bit more legitimate. Now, somebody's not going to go, well, I think he probably killed that guy. But somebody might go, it turns out the Clintons actually aren't the people who I thought they were. I didn't know he was friends with a convicted child rapist, with a guy on the sex offender registry. I didn't know. I wonder if there's any validity to that other thing, the Clinton Foundation shenanigans and people kind of start to look into it and they wonder. And then they go, well, he probably didn't kill a guy, but I mean, is he the kind of guy that might kill a guy? I don't know. I didn't think that other thing was true. Turns out it is. That's all you need. That's all you need. And then that avalanche of bullshit starts to weigh on people's minds. You don't knock somebody out by throwing haymakers at them all day long. You work the body. You hit them. And the first 4, 5, 6, 7 times you hit somebody in the gut, it doesn't hurt. You shrug it off. They laugh right in your face. You hit them 12 to 15 times, it might be getting a little sore. You hit them 30 times in the gut in that same spot, and all of a sudden it starts hurting real bad. And guess what? You drop your hands. And as soon as you drop your hands to defend against those body shots, bang, out go the lights. And that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. He's feeding into the paranoia, feeding into this narrative of all these crazy things that the Clintons have done. And half of them aren't true, but half of them are. See, that's the thing. You create doubt. Which ones are? Which ones aren't? And then you drop some bombshells. Stuff like that. That's the knockout punch. You drag them into the mud. You drag them down into the mud where you're good at fighting. And they're not going to be able to do the same thing to him. Because he's not a politician. It doesn't matter that he's so closely associated with the mafia that they essentially built Trump Tower. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he rooted for the housing bubble to collapse so that he can make money off foreclosed homes. It doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. None of it sticks to him. He's Teflon. It's not going to change anybody's mind about who Donald Trump is and what he stands for. It's going to change people's minds about Hillary Clinton and what they stand for. That's why I said before, Hillary Clinton will never be president of the United States. You heard it here first.